Today's topic, America's #1 wealth killer. Taxes. No, I'm just kidding. It's cars. It's cars. Of course it's cars. Everybody wants to have the fanciest car. No one looks at the long-term repercussions. Not today, my friend. We ride. Pun intended. Seriously though, this video is going to be a little bit different. This one was actually sparked by a video I saw on TikTok. Funny enough, I actually don't have a TikTok account. I'm not with all the cool kids, and I realize I am getting much older when I say that now. But I did see this clip on Twitter from TikTok. Still makes me cool. So this video sparked my interest on, holy moly, we spent a lot of money on cars. And then I went down the rabbit hole and I realized it's worse than I thought. Now, again, here I am, Mr. Financial Planner. We work with clients day in and day out. Most of them have cars, but we see these numbers. I'd like to give a shout out to my clients because we very rarely have conversations on, holy cow, that was a stupid car decision, but we know they're out there. So I'm going to walk through in today's video why cars are the wealth killer, some numbers to keep in mind when you are shopping for your next vehicle, and then also something I like to call opportunity costs. You know, what are we missing out on by driving that fancy car? Stay tuned. We learn more about this killer coming up next. Okay, first up, what sparked this? TikTok did. And you may have saw it, but it went viral. Not only one of her videos, but two of her videos. Let me give you some context. Gets on TikTok, tells us her car payment is, wait for it, $1,400 per month. You're probably thinking that she's driving a nice car, right? She is, but I bet you did not expect the word Tahoe. That's right. The car that you see all the nice families driving around, their kids are throwing yogurt off the back seat, there's stuff everywhere. Sometimes I'll say in our SUV, I think there's actually an ecosystem in the car seats. That's right. $1,400 a month. For 3 years, she's made payments. Do the quick math, beep, boop, boop, bop, bop, right around 50 grand. How much did the car initially cost? Give me a sec. $84,000. 3 years later, guess how much she paid in principal? Beep, boop, bop, bop. 10 grand. That's right. 3 years later, she still got 74 G's on that bad boy. And later in my research, I found out the interest rate was 10.4%. Why is that crazy? She bought this vehicle back in the pandemic. And if you are an interest rate guru like I am, you would sit there and say, that's weird because rates were kind of low in the pandemic, right? That's when we saw like Subaru was doing like 0% rates. You could almost get car loans for nothing. Not her. 10.4. The best part about this story was the next video she released, she instantly took another car and drove it over her husband numerous times. Not actually physically, but through verbal confrontation, where she called him out for having a truck, a Silverado, I believe, also bought in 2022, where you would be saying rates were pretty low then. His rate, 14%. Price of the truck, $78,000. His car payment, $1,600 per month. That's right. These two individuals, $3,000 per month in car payments. Now, I'm not here to car shame because I don't know. They might have crazy income that I don't know about. I know nothing about these people. They're probably awesome people, and they also obviously had great cars. But that's a lot of car payment, right? $3,000 per month in car payments. Now, that number might sound like literally a mortgage to some of you. To others, you might think, what's the big deal? It's parked in my garage right now. Regardless, it's the deeper conversation of why this is such a wealth killer. My favorite part about that video, before I depart from that video, was she says, maybe we'll just let them repossess both of them because now we have the Audi. I'm not kidding when I say I laughed for a solid 2 minutes. So all the conversation about bad car decisions, they still have the Audi parked in the driveway. I chuckle about that because we know Audis are also expensive cars, right? But regardless, this video was important because it triggered my theory of, wow, this is a really large wealth killer. So that's the first story. We'll put the link down below so that you can also track down that video. But now let's get into talking about maybe some ideas of some guidelines so that you don't get yourself into this type of trouble. So let's cover a little bit more trouble. So while we use that very nice gal and her story, and the only reason why I share that story is because she shared that story. I believe the total between those two videos is like 6 million views. So not bad. Some more facts I'm going to read to you. I got to peek over here a little bit. So car debt in America currently just shy of 1.6 trillion. That's trillion with a T, and there's right around 108 million auto loans, right around $1.6 trillion. The scarier fact that I read here was that Gen Z usually is listing that 20% of their after-tax income is going to a vehicle. After-tax income going to a vehicle. That is a massive number. That is a huge part of a budget. That number is almost as high as what we would see some of our clients' mortgage, and these are just car payments. Clearly, there's an issue here. Here's why we call it the wealth killer too. Cars, for the most part, unless you are a classic car collector or you can pick out diamonds in the rough, they're a depreciating asset. They usually lose up to 60% of their value in that first 5 years. So not only are they a depreciating asset, they are a rapidly depreciating asset. This is sometimes why you hear the note, right? You never buy a new car. As soon as you drive it off the lot, it's already depreciated a good amount. So numbers are terrifying here. They likely only got worse during the pandemic. Pandemics had somewhat of a little bit of a cushion because of some of those COVID payments, the stimulus checks that came out that probably helped some people get into bad situations. We're now seeing that unravel a little bit. But this is why car debt, auto loans are one of the largest wealth killers in America, because what happens usually once you get a car paid off? Most people don't even get them paid off, right? They trade them in and they do it all over again. Maybe they even continue to increase a little bit. It's a never-ending cycle for a lot of people. It's very rare to see. I used to joke, the international vehicle of physicians was the Honda Accord and the Honda Civic, and they drove it for 20 years. Just not the case anymore. And part of it's because cars have become so tech-based that, it's like the new iPhone. If you're 2 years old, it's like you have, the old touchscreen phone, right? The Palm Pilot. The technology has made them change so quickly that you almost feel like you have to get the next one. So auto loans, cars in general, the largest wealth killer in America, with some of those terrifying facts. Coming up next, though, what should we be looking at? What numbers should we be following here? Okay, some numbers to follow. I'll be honest, I had to look into this one a little bit because when we build a financial plan, we look at two ratios. We look at your home cost ratio, we look at your total debt ratio. Total debt ratio, we usually will say, we don't want your total debt numbers above 36%. We usually want you much lower than that because we want to keep room in there for good discretionary spending, that fun money per se, right? So we never really look at car loans on their own. We kind of always look at them together. So I did a little bit of research here. I'm going to give you two approaches that I found that also, when I went through thinking about our clients, it matched up, right? It was pretty similar. The first one that I came across was what they call the 25-35 rule. And what this says is your car should not cost more than 25 to 35% of your pre-tax income. So to give you an example, let's just say $60,000 of income, you're looking at $15,000 to $21,000. Their reasoning behind 25 to 35 is if you're not a person that needs a fancy car, you don't care about cars that much, you're probably on the lower end of 25%. If you are a person that fancies a nice car or enjoys the car, the driving experience a little bit more, maybe you're at that 35%. The other rule that I came across is what they labeled as the 24-10 approach. And this was based on a 20% down payment, 4-year loan, and then car-related expenses. So not only your car payment, but insurance payments, never exceeding more than 10% of your monthly income. One thing I like about that rule is I like less than 4%. One common thread of advice that we've always provided at our firm is if a car payment is going to take more than 3 years, you can't pay it off in 3 years, right? Like you look at the monthly number for 3 years and you say, sure, I can't cover that. That's like too much car. So we've always used that 3-year rule. They use a 4-year rule, so I like that. The one thing I don't love about that is 10% of your monthly income is still a pretty high number. So that's one that seemed a little bit higher there, but I can appreciate that. So I think those are two really good numbers to look at. Like I said, the two ratios, but the one ratio we look at in total is that total debt ratio. Total debt ratio from our side of it is not only your car, but it also includes your home, and then student loans are also in that. We never want to see that number above 36, likely, ideally, much lower than that. Fortunately for us, we don't really see credit card debt or any types of personal debt, but any types of recurring debt payments would have to come into that number, that calculation. That's what we'll use. And that 36 is actually based on gross income as well. So there's some numbers to think about when you're going through the car buying experience so that you do not allow your next vehicle to become a wealth killer. All right. And to end, we're going to have a little bit of fun. I wrote a blog post a while ago, which was labeled as why you should not buy an expensive car yet. This was actually one of my very first blog posts. This blog post still does good today. What I did was I did 3 separate battle royales, right? 2 separate cars. One, what I would label as a good car. It gets you from point A to point B. It's reliable. It's safe. Versus maybe a little bit more bougie, right? A little bit fancier car. And then the goal was to say, all right, I think we use Edmunds, but like the total cost, we add that in there. And the difference between the two, we took that number and said, well, what if you would have invested that? So let me read you the first example and then follow me for the next two following the same guidelines. So our first battle was the Volkswagen Passat. That was one of my first cars. Love that Passat. Versus the Infiniti QX50. Funny story, the Infiniti QX50 was our first family car. That was the first car I ever put a car seat in. Another great vehicle, but I wanted to compare these two. So I used 2022 car values. I just did not get back to update this one. We did Edmunds true cost to own over a 5-year period. Volkswagen Passat, just shy of 33,000. The QX50, just above 50,000. So I said, not too bad, right? That was my note in this one. Right around $17,000 or so in what I would label as an error in that 5-year window, or right around $3,500 per year. I'll also put a link to this blog post down in the show notes. For simplicity, we took that 17,000 and change, and we just said we invested into a Roth IRA over those 5 years. Now, that's not a perfect example, right? Because you can't actually put $17,000 in one given year into a Roth. But just stick with me. If you assume a modest annual return of 6% over a 30-year period, so you made this, you essentially made the right financial decision. You went with the VW Passat, you saved that extra money, you then put that towards the Roth. You then let the Roth just do its thing for the next 30 years. That small mistake of about 17,000 using 6% turned out to be just shy of $100,000 mistake. All right. Again, I'll put this in the notes below so you can read through it. But that was the Volkswagen Passat versus the Infiniti QX50. The old classic Honda Accord versus the BMW 330. The BMW, the first car that everyone says, look at me, I made it. But now we're going to put the BMW in its place. So 5-year total, Honda right around 31,000, BMW 330 right around 56. Total error over 5 years, right around 25,000. You let that grow at 6% for 30 years, you were at $144,000 of bad decisions. The scarier part of that, the average 401k balance, it was 2021. I know I got to update some of the data here. That was more than the average 401k balance in 2021, which was 130,000, actually right around 129,000. So these little car decisions add up over time. And last but not least, the favorite cutie on the road, the Toyota Corolla versus the one and only Range Rover. So what do we have here? Toyota Corolla coming in at $27,000 over 5 years. Absolutely gorgeous. 2022 Land Rover Range Rover, $118,000 on the dot. A $90,000 error. What does that turn out to be? 6% over 30 years, $521,000. $500,000 by a bad car decision. That's why cars are a killer of wealth. Now, I am not here to shun your car decision because this might fit in your budget and you might look at that and say, I'm okay with that opportunity cost. But the key is to bring it to your attention and let you know why these decisions are so important. While they may not seem too crazy in this one moment, you let that compound over 30 years and it becomes a much larger number, 100,000, 150,000, 500,000 after that. They really start to snowball. So keep an eye on your car buying experience, understand the numbers, stay in your lane, pun intended, and make sure you're not making any silly decisions too early in the game. Or like I always describe to our clients, you're going to be able to get that fancy car, but maybe just not yet. And there you have it. America's #1 wealth killer, all the above. The goal today was to bring a little bit of awareness. And as I noted towards the end of that video, right, I'm not here to car shame you. It's just to bring awareness to the numbers, why it's having such a large effect. If cars are something that you value, if you're an avid car collector, this may not pertain to you, right? This is more or less for the average individual going out to buy a car who is not a car collector, and they're just buying it to get them to point A to point B. They're just trying to see how many Kardashian points they need, right? That's really the big difference here. So as always, thanks for hanging out with me for the last 15 minutes or so. I will also put some notes for this one down in the show notes for both the blog, but also the TikTok video, so that you can get a little bit more context on that. If you have not done so yet, please subscribe to the channel. Click a little bell icon. Also get a notification every time we release a new video weekly. That's right, weekly now, because we are YouTube official. And also, I beg of you, drop us a comment. What do you want to see on the next video? What do you like? What do you hate? Share it. I got thick skin. I'm okay. Again, thanks for hanging out with me past 15 minutes or so. As always, I will catch you on the next video.